Grandpa took me in after my parents tried for baby number 7 and expected me to keep being their free childcare. So I moved out, but my mom called the cops on me and tried to claim it was kidnapping. Then CPS showed up. I remember the smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven and the sound of jazz crackling from the old radio on Sunday mornings. That was my childhood, or at least, the best part of it. My name's Tyler. I'm 18 years old now, living in Rochester, New York. But when I think of the word home, my mind always goes back to those early years at my grandparents' house. My grandparents raised me from the time I was born until I was about 6. My mom and dad were only teenagers when I came along. They were more interested in going out, partying, and crashing at their friends' places than being parents. I used to joke, even as a little kid, that they treated our house like a hotel. They'd show up late, sleep in until noon, and leave again before dinner. No goodbyes, no bedtime stories. But Grandma June and Grandpa Ed, they were the real deal. Every morning, Grandpa would have my cereal ready before I even stumbled into the kitchen. He'd ruffle my hair and say, "Champ, today's another good day to be proud of who you are." I never really understood what that meant at the time, but the way he said it made me believe it mattered. Grandma ran a tight ship, but her warmth made everything feel safe. I still remember sitting at the kitchen table while she taught me how to write my name. She made learning fun, always patient, always smiling. And if I got it right, she'd cut up an apple and sprinkle cinnamon on it like a little reward. They gave me structure. They gave me pride. More than that, they gave me love without conditions. And it wasn't just the big stuff, either. Grandpa taught me how to tie my shoes and fold laundry the army way. We'd go to the park every Saturday, and he'd teach me how to read the clouds. "Always be ready for change," he'd say, looking up at the sky, weather or otherwise. That house, their house, was more than just 4 walls and a roof. It was where I learned to feel safe, to trust people, where I learned that I mattered. But it didn't last. When I was 6, my parents showed up one day, looking excited like they had just won the lottery. Mom said they were ready to start fresh, that we'd all be living together from now on in our own place. I didn't even get to say goodbye to the treehouse Grandpa built in the backyard. One morning I was packing my school lunch with Grandma, and the next I was sitting in the back of a rusty car, driving away from the only real home I'd ever known. They moved us into a tiny apartment with peeling paint and neighbors who argued through the walls. The floors creaked, and the heat barely worked in the winter. But that wasn't what hurt the most. It was how quickly the warmth disappeared, how my parents turned out to be more interested in each other than in raising a kid. That's when everything started to change. But before all of that, I had known real love, real stability. I had known what it was like to be held, to be seen. That's what makes the rest of this story matter. Because you can't fully understand what you've lost until you know, deep down, that you once had it. At first, I tried to believe my parents were really trying, that maybe things would get better once we got settled. But deep down, even as a 6-year-old, I knew something was off. We moved into this cramped little house on the west side of town. The paint on the siding was chipped, and the backyard was just a patch of dirt and weeds. Inside, the carpet smelled like cigarettes and the faucet in the kitchen never stopped dripping. But that wasn't what made it feel wrong. It was the silence. There was no radio in the mornings, no "good job" when I finished my chores, no warm plates of pancakes on Sundays. Just silence, interrupted by the occasional argument between my mom and dad. A couple months in, my mom sat me down on the couch, the saggy one with the torn cushion, and told me she had exciting news. She was pregnant. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She smiled and hugged me like I should have been thrilled. "You're gonna be such a big help," she said. "You're gonna be the best big brother ever." At first, it was just little things. Could I hand her a bottle of water? Could I grab the remote? Could I watch the baby for 5 minutes while she showered? It didn't feel like much. I wanted to help. I thought maybe if I did, they'd start acting more like the parents I remembered seeing in cartoons or at school pickup. But 5 minutes turned into half an hour. "Can you just hold him while I run to the store? Can you feed him his bottle? He only takes it from you now. Just rock him until he falls asleep. I need a nap." I was 7. I didn't know how to say no. And every time I hesitated, they made it feel like I was doing something wrong. "Don't be selfish," Dad would say without looking up from his game controller. "We're all a team here." Mom would throw in, "You're lucky to have a little brother." Some kids don't get that. I didn't feel lucky. I felt tired, confused. The house didn't have many rules. Unless you count, don't wake the baby, and don't bother us unless it's important. No one checked my homework anymore. No one asked if I was hungry. But if the baby cried, it was suddenly my problem. I'd be woken up at midnight and told, "Go see what's wrong with your brother." They made it sound like I was part of something noble, like I should be proud to help. But all it did was make me feel like I didn't matter unless I was useful. One day, I asked my mom if I could go to the park with my friend Connor. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Not today," she said. "The baby's teething and I need you here." I looked over at my dad, hoping for a different answer. He just shrugged. "Connor'll still be there tomorrow, won't he?" I nodded, but he wasn't. His family moved a week later, and I never saw him again. That's when it started to click. This wasn't just temporary. This wasn't helping. This was my new job. A job I never asked for, with no days off and no appreciation. And even though I was still just a kid, something in me started to carry the weight of everything around me, like it was mine to fix. And that weight? It was only getting heavier. After my little brother came, it was like the floodgates opened. My parents went from barely capable to wildly careless. Every couple years, another baby showed up. No warning, no plan. Just, guess what? You're gonna be a big brother again. Like it was a blessing, not a crisis. By the time I turned 13, there were 6 of them. 6 screaming, fighting, messy little kids, all living under one sagging roof. Each one louder than the last. Each one dropped into my lap the second their diapers were on straight. And me? I was the full-time unpaid babysitter, cook, tutor, referee, bath time supervisor, bedtime storyteller, and human shield between them and anything even remotely dangerous. If one of them got sick, I was the one sitting up with a bucket. If one of them had a tantrum in public, I was the one dragging them out of the store while my mom flipped through Instagram and my dad stood in the parking lot vaping like it was a sport. It didn't matter that I was just a kid myself. They started treating me like I was their parenting backup. Worse, like I was the only one even remotely responsible. There was no space in that house that was just mine. I didn't have a bedroom. I had a mattress on the floor of the laundry room after the 4th baby took my old room. I didn't have hobbies. I had chores. School wasn't even a break. I'd sit in class exhausted, trying to stay awake while my classmates talked about movies and after-school clubs. I remember one day, our social studies teacher asked us to pair up and share what we liked to do for fun. My partner said she was in a swim league. When it was my turn, I blanked. I couldn't remember the last time I did anything just because I wanted to. I cook sometimes. I mumbled. She laughed, thinking I was joking. Public outings were the worst. Taking all the kids anywhere, even just to the grocery store, was a disaster waiting to happen. They'd scream, throw things, run off, argue in the middle of the aisles. People stared at me like I was the father of 6 unruly kids and a complete failure at it. I caught the looks, the judgment. One time a woman actually told me, "You know, you should really keep your kids under control." I didn't even correct her. I just nodded and muttered, "I'll try." And meanwhile, my parents acted like saints. "We believe in big families," my mom would say, like she was doing something noble. My dad liked to call it old-school parenting, meaning he barely lifted a finger and left everything to whoever didn't complain loud enough. Me. The worst part wasn't just the work. It was how invisible I felt. If I complained, I was ungrateful. If I wanted to go out with a friend or join a club, I was abandoning the family. "We all make sacrifices," my mom would say, but she never said what hers were. She liked to call it teaching responsibility. My dad said it built character, but it didn't feel like character. It felt like being erased. Sometimes at night, when the house finally got quiet, I'd lie there on that thin mattress surrounded by baskets of dirty laundry and wonder what my life might have looked like if I'd never left my grandparents' house. If I'd stayed where someone actually looked out for me. But I hadn't stayed. I'd been pulled out of that safe place and dropped into this mess. And now, somehow, it had become my job to keep it all from falling apart. By the time I was 15, I had stopped hoping for things. I didn't ask for birthday presents. I didn't try to make plans with friends. I didn't even bother pretending I had any real say in my own life. Because every time I did, every single time, something would happen to remind me that I wasn't a teenager. I was a tool, a built-in babysitter, a placeholder adult in a house with 2 people who still acted like teenagers themselves. One Friday afternoon, I got invited to a party. Nothing wild, just a few kids from school getting together, ordering pizza, playing games, maybe watching a movie. It was the first time in years I'd been included in anything like that. I said yes. I even smiled. My stomach was doing flips all day like I just want something. I told my mom the second I got home. "Nope," she said without looking up from her phone. "We need you here. Your dad and I are going out tonight." I stared at her. "You told me last week you weren't doing anything." "Well, now we are. Plans change. Life's not fair." I should have known. I should have expected it, but I didn't. So I asked again. "It's just one night," I said. "Can't you two skip this one?" "I haven't been out in months." She glared at me like I was being dramatic. "Do you think we ever get to do anything for ourselves? All we do is take care of this family." I opened my mouth, then closed it. I didn't trust myself to speak. That night, I sat in the living room with a baby on one hip and a toddler screaming because someone stole her sippy cup. I could hear my parents laughing out in the driveway. They were taking selfies by the car before they left, like teenagers headed to prom. I stood there in the dark kitchen, looking out through the window as they drove away, and something broke in me. I think that was the moment I stopped pretending that it might get better, pretending that they were just going through a rough patch, pretending that one day they'd wake up and realize I deserved a life too. A week later, my cousin Paul came to visit from Albany. He was 20, in college, and somehow managed to feel like both an adult and a real person, not a fake one like my dad, who still wore backward hats and posted memes like a 16-year-old. Paul and I were sitting on the back steps while the kids screamed inside. He asked what I liked to do for fun. I laughed without meaning to. "I don't know. Sleep? Eat food that's not cut into little pieces." He looked at me sideways. "When's the last time you got to just be a kid?" I shrugged. That night, Paul sat my parents down. I don't know everything he said, but I caught the end of it through the hallway. "You've got him living like he's 35 with 5 kids and no support. He's 15. Either you start parenting your own children, or I'm calling someone who will." They were furious. My mom stormed into my room after Paul left, red-faced and huffing. "Are you seriously telling family secrets now?" "No," I said, my voice flat. "I'm just tired of being your backup plan." For the first time ever, she didn't have a response. She just left the room and slammed the door. And that silence? It felt better than any apology ever could. I was 17 when they dropped the news. We were all sitting in the living room. The twins were throwing blocks at each other. The baby had a blowout diaper. My little sister was singing off-key to some cartoon song blaring from the TV. I was trying to read, half asleep, pretending not to notice the smell coming from the kitchen. Then my mom clapped her hands and said, "We have an announcement." My stomach dropped. I didn't know why, but something in her voice made my skin crawl. She looked at my dad, grinning like they'd just won a cruise. "I'm pregnant." I didn't move. I didn't speak. My eyes just locked onto hers, waiting for the punchline. "It's true," she said, beaming. Lucky number 7. The room was chaos, but all I could hear was the word 7. 7 kids. No money, no space, no plan. My dad chuckled. "This time, it's gonna be different. We're more prepared now." Prepared? We were living on boxed mac and cheese, and my school supplies came from Dollar General. The twins didn't even have matching shoes. What exactly were they prepared for? Then Mom turned to me. "We're really gonna need your help this time, more than ever." I stared at her. "No," I said, quietly. She blinked like she hadn't heard me. "No what?" "No. I'm not doing it again." She laughed like I was joking. "Don't be like that, Tyler. You're the glue in this family." "I'm not glue," I snapped. "I'm a kid, or at least I was supposed to be." My dad raised an eyebrow. "Watch your tone." "Why?" I said, standing up. "Because I'm finally saying something you don't like?" They both stared at me, stunned. I think it was the first time I'd ever talked back like that. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the house creak and the baby cry and my mom cough through the walls. I thought about all the years I gave up, all the birthdays I skipped, all the friends I lost track of, and now they wanted more? No. I grabbed my phone and called the only people I knew would pick up, my grandparents. When my grandma answered, I didn't even say hello. I just whispered, "Can I come home?" She didn't ask questions. She didn't hesitate. "We'll be there first thing in the morning, sweetheart." And they were. At 7:32 a.m. The next day, a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. My grandpa stepped out wearing his old coat and carrying a thermos of coffee. Grandma waved from the passenger seat, tears in her eyes before she even got out. I didn't say goodbye to my parents. I didn't explain. I didn't owe them that. I grabbed my duffel bag, already packed, walked down the front steps, and got into the car. As we pulled away, I looked back once. The house was already fading in the rearview mirror. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel fear. I just felt free. I didn't make it a full day at my grandparents' house before my phone started blowing up. First, it was my mom. "MOM, where are you? This isn't funny." "MOM, you think you can just leave like that?" "MOM, answer me right now, Tyler." Then my dad jumped in. "Dad, get your ass back here. You think you can just walk out and disrespect us?" "Dad, you want to play adult? Fine. Start paying rent." "Dad, you're dead to me." It didn't take long before they escalated. They called the cops. Twice. The first time, it was a welfare check. The officer who knocked on the door looked embarrassed before he even said a word. "Sorry," he said, glancing behind him like he hoped no one was watching. "We got a call from your parents. Said you ran away." "I'm 18. I said. He nodded. "Yeah, we figured. Just had to follow through." My grandparents stood on either side of me. Grandpa had his arms folded. Grandma had her hand on my shoulder. The officer looked around at the tidy little porch, the rose bushes, the warm porch light. "You good here?" "I'm good," he nodded. "Well, then I'll be on my way." 3 days later, they tried again. This time they said I'd stolen property when I left. The officer looked even more annoyed this time. "They said you took your little brother's iPad." "It's mine," I said. "Bought it with my birthday money last year." He sighed. "Yeah, I figured. Don't worry. Nothing's going on your record. They're just trying to force contact." And that's exactly what it was, a strategy. Not real concern, not real panic. Just another way to yank the leash and remind me they still thought they owned me. Then the extended family got involved. Aunt Rhonda messaged me on Facebook. "Aunt Rhonda, honey, your mom is a mess. You're breaking her heart." Aunt Rhonda, don't let outsiders poison your mind. You only get one mother. By outsiders, she meant my grandparents. The people who actually raised me when no one else could be bothered. I didn't respond. Then came the real insult. My mom posted on Facebook a long, teary, half-truth-filled paragraph about how parenting is the hardest job and how some kids just don't understand the sacrifices you make for them. She didn't name me, but everyone knew. The comments were a mess of "stay strong" and "teenagers are so ungrateful these days." I wanted to scream, but I didn't have to. Because then Paul stepped in. Cousin Paul, the same one who stood up for me last year, posted a comment under her post so calm and lethal I almost saved it as my phone background. "Paul, I've seen how you treat Tyler. Calling him ungrateful after making him raise your other 6 kids while you played house is beyond ironic. He didn't leave because he's selfish. He left because you broke him. And if you can't see that, maybe you're not the parent you think you are." The comment got over 100 likes. Some people replied to argue. Most didn't. And for the first time, I saw something shift. Family members who had stayed silent started reaching out privately. Cousins. An uncle I hadn't heard from in 2 years. Even my dad's sister, who I barely knew. They weren't angry. They were apologizing. They were listening. It didn't fix everything. The damage was still real. The stress was still heavy. But the truth was finally out there, and once it was, there was no putting it back. A week after I moved in with my grandparents, Grandma sat me down at the kitchen table with a folder in front of her and a quiet look in her eyes. "We've been keeping records," she said, her voice soft but steady, "not because we ever wanted to use them, but just in case." Inside the folder were notes, photos, dates, everything I'd told them over the years, every visit when I showed up with spit up on my shirt and circles under my eyes, every time they noticed bruises that weren't from abuse, but from exhaustion, missed school days, canceled birthdays, times they had offered to help, only to be waved off by my mom. Grandpa nodded from across the table. "We're going to child services." My stomach twisted. "What about the kids?" "That's why we're doing it," he said. "They didn't waste time." The next day, we sat in a small office with a CPS caseworker named Karen who wore tired eyes and a wedding ring that kept spinning on her finger. I let my grandparents talk first. Then she turned to me. "Tyler, I know this might be hard," she said gently, "but we need to understand what your role has been in that home." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I've been raising their kids since I was 8. She blinked. "I fed them, bathed them, helped them with homework, took them to school, stayed up all night when they were sick. I changed diapers before I even hit double digits. My parents didn't help. They dropped them on me and left." Karen didn't look surprised, just tired, like she'd heard stories like this before. "Did they ever say you had to do these things?" "They didn't have to. If I didn't, things got worse. Screaming, guilt trips. The baby would cry, and they'd just sit there. I didn't have a choice." She nodded slowly. "And how old were the kids when you left?" "The youngest was 3. The oldest, besides me, is 10. Have any of them spoken about this?" I hesitated. "I don't know, but I think they might. They've started asking questions lately, like why I left, like why Mom always says I was lazy, when they saw me do everything." She scribbled something in her notebook. "We'll follow up." And they did. Over the next few weeks, they spoke to my siblings at school, to neighbors, even a few of my teachers, the ones who noticed when I started falling asleep in class or showing up with half-finished homework. The pieces came together, and then the phone rang. "Karen again. We've completed our preliminary findings," she said, "and I wanted to let you know. We are moving forward with a neglect case." My heart skipped. "What does that mean?" "It means your parents have been reported for inappropriate delegation of caregiving. It's considered neglect, especially given your age at the time and the responsibilities placed on you." I sat down, legs suddenly weak. "They'll be required to attend mandatory parenting classes," she continued. "There will also be scheduled home supervision and financial audits." "What about the kids?" "They'll stay with your parents for now, unless anything else surfaces. But we're keeping close watch. And if any of the children express a desire to live elsewhere, well, we'll look into that too." My grandparents were quiet when I told them. Then Grandpa stood up and said, "Good. It's about damn time." That night, I slept for 10 hours straight. No crying, no yelling, no one banging on my door asking for juice or help or silence. Just rest. Real, guiltless rest. And for the first time, justice didn't feel like a dream. It felt like the beginning of something new. The first thing I had to relearn was how to be a teenager, not a caretaker, not a problem solver, just me. At my grandparents' house, the air felt different, calmer. I could breathe without waiting for someone to yank me back into chaos. I still got up early, out of habit, but instead of fixing breakfast for 6 screaming kids, I drank coffee with Grandpa on the porch while he read the paper. Within a month, my grades started climbing. I didn't even realize how much I'd let them slide until my counselor called me in. "Tyler," she said, flipping through my records. "What changed?" I shrugged. I got out. She didn't ask what that meant, just nodded and said, "Keep going." I applied for an engineering program at the community college, mostly because Grandpa suggested it. "You're good with your hands," he said one night while I helped him fix the dishwasher. "But you've also got a brain that doesn't quit. That's a rare combo." I got in. 2 months later, I was taking night classes and working part-time at an electronics repair shop near downtown. My boss was chill, paid fair, and didn't care that I didn't talk much. I started stacking my own money. Real paychecks, not fake "good job" stickers for changing diapers. My parents still tried to reach out sometimes. Mostly my mom. Messages like, "MOM, your sister misses you. MOM, you can't just erase your family. MOM, when are you coming to visit?" I never answered. But then one day, something weird happened. My youngest brother, the 10-year-old, got a hold of someone's phone and messaged me through a school email. Him, "Why did you leave?" Him, "Mom says you didn't want us." "Is that true?" Him, "I don't think it is." That one hit me in the gut. I waited a day before writing back. Me, "I didn't leave you. I left them. I love you. Always have." Me, "I just couldn't survive in that house anymore." He never replied. But a week later, I got another message, this time from one of the twins. Then the oldest girl. They were starting to ask questions, starting to notice how little our parents actually did. I didn't push. I just answered when they reached out. Meanwhile, back at the house I'd left behind, things weren't going so smoothly. The CPS supervision wasn't temporary. It stuck. My parents were forced to attend weekly parenting courses and their spending was being monitored by a caseworker. According to Paul, who still kept tabs through family gossip, the glow was fading. And my role? I was finally out of it. No more guilt. No more pressure. Just me, learning who I was without being buried under everyone else's needs. It wasn't fast. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that made all the difference.